Welcome. Be sure to like and subscribe for more scary stories, or I will come for you. I'd like to thank Gary Gutierrez for joining the Curator's Disciples. Your viewership is very much appreciated. It was amazing to hear so many locations of my listeners from all around the world. Let's keep it going. So many amazing new places I'm hearing each day. If anyone would like early access to my latest stories and an ad-free listening experience, consider becoming one of the Curator's Disciples. The link is in the description below. Today's story, Do Not Look, by the Curator. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to write one of these posts. You know the ones. The people who swear up and down that something impossible happened to them. That they've seen something they shouldn't have, and now they're doomed. I used to laugh at that kind of stuff. I used to think it was all a joke, but I'm not laughing now. I don't know how much time I have left, but I have to tell someone. Maybe if I get this out there, maybe if someone sees it, they won't make the same mistake I did. My name is Kieran Voss. I am, or was, a hacker. Nothing fancy, nothing like what you see in the movies. I wasn't some genius coding mastermind or some cyberpunk vigilante exposing government secret. I was just a guy who knew his way around encryption, decryption, and the kind of shit that exists in the parts of the internet normal people don't go to. I wasn't in it for the thrill. I wasn't in it for some noble cause. I was in it because I was broke. But that wasn't always the case. I grew up in a quiet, gray little town in upstate New York. One of those places where the roads are cracked, the schools are underfunded, and the only jobs worth anything are either factory work or selling weed. My old man was an electrician, the kind of guy who worked himself to death just to put food on the table. My mom? She bailed when I was 10. I never asked why. My dad tried, though. He really did. But when he got laid off, things went from bad to worse. The house got cold in the winters because we couldn't afford heating oil. Food became 2-minute noodles and canned beans. I watched him drink himself into a stupor most nights, his only way to cope with being a failure in his own eyes. So, I did what any smart, desperate kid would do. I learned to hustle. At first, it was small-time scams, selling fake IDs to my classmates, fishing for credit card numbers on AOL chat rooms back when people were still gullible. Nothing major. Just enough to make sure I had clean clothes and a meal that wasn't instant noodles. By the time I was 16, I had a reputation. I was the guy who could unlock your iPhone, get you access to your ex's emails, or even wipe a bad grade from the school system for a price. And then I got greedy. I got into black hat hacking. Real, serious shit. I joined forums where people traded stolen information, sold hacked bank accounts, and ran money laundering operations. I learned the ropes from guys who never used their real names. Guys who had seen their friends get arrested for making one stupid mistake. It was a thrill at first. The rush of breaking into a system, of knowing I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. But then I fucked up. I tried to skim from the wrong people. I hacked a crypto wallet, thinking it belonged to some clueless whale. Turns out, it belonged to the Pakhan, a high-ranking member of a Russian bratva. They found me. I don't know how, but they did. I got a phone call in the middle of the night from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was calm, almost amused. "Nice trick. Malinki Kaker," he said. "Little hacker. You have 3 days to pay us back, with interest." I didn't sleep that night. or the night after. I tried to get the money together, but you don't just pull 50 grand out of thin air. I sold everything I had. My laptop, my gaming rig, even my dad's old truck. It wasn't enough. That's when I started taking jobs on the dark web. Most of it was small-time stuff. Cracking passwords. Uncovering dirt for private clients. Nothing violent. Nothing that would land me on some FBI watch list. But then I got an offer. It was anonymous, like most of them. No name, no contact information. Just a simple message. Decrypt the attached files. Payment, $50,000 upon completion. 50 grand. That was more money than I had ever seen at once. Enough to make my problems go away. I didn't ask questions. I didn't care who the client was or where the files came from. I just started working. At first, it was standard encryption. Heavy, but nothing I couldn't crack. Then I got past the first layer. And that was when things got weird. The files were classified government documents, stamped with official seals, full of terminology I didn't understand. But one phrase kept coming up over and over again. The phrase, SCP-96. I had heard of SCP before. There were whole websites dedicated to it. Stories about weird supernatural entities, creatures locked up in secret facilities. I always thought it was just internet horror bullshit. Creative writing. Nothing real. But these documents weren't written like stories. They were reports. Detailed reports. Descriptions of an entity. A humanoid creature. Pale skin. Emaciated. It kept its face hidden at all times. The key detail, the thing that made my stomach drop, was this. Anyone who sees its face, whether in person, in a photo, or even a video, will die. Not just die. They will be hunted. No matter where they are in the world, no matter how far they run, the creature will find them. And when it does, it will kill them. I remember shaking my head, laughing a little. It was ridiculous. This was just a government creepypasta, right? Maybe an old psychological experiment. Some kind of Cold War paranoia. I kept scrolling, and that was when my screen glitched. Just for a second, a single frame of video. A distorted image. Grainy, corrupted. A face. And then my laptop crashed. I sat there, staring at the dead screen. My breath felt too loud in my ears. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it was fine. It was nothing. It was just a stupid story. But then I heard the first noise outside my apartment. A shuffle. Then a click. The sound of my front door unlocking. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. When you spend hours staring at a screen, your brain plays tricks on you. You hear things that aren't there. You see movement in your peripheral vision that disappears when you look directly at it. I told myself that was all it was, just a trick of the mind. But then I heard it again. A slow, deliberate scraping sound. It was coming from outside my apartment door. I live alone. I don't have neighbors close by, just a crappy little studio in a rundown complex where the walls are too thin and the pipes always make weird noises. But this wasn't pipes. This wasn't the wind. It was something moving. I turned off my laptop, still trying to convince myself I wasn't freaking out over nothing. The screen stayed black, refusing to power back on. I swore under my breath, standing up to grab my phone. It was 3 a.m. I walked to the door as quietly as I could. The scraping had stopped. For a second, I felt relief. Just the building settling, I thought. Just some stupid coincidence. Then the doorbell rang. My stomach lurched. Nobody visits me. Not at 3 in the morning. Not ever. I stood frozen, my hand inches from the doorknob. My apartment has one of those old-school peepholes, the kind that distorts everything with a fisheye effect. I hesitated before leaning forward and peering through it. There was nothing there. The hallway was empty. I exhaled, forcing myself to relax. Maybe some drunk had the wrong apartment. Maybe I imagined it. Sleep deprivation does weird things to you. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. Unknown number. Tell me you didn't see its face. My skin went cold. I stared at the message, my breath coming short and shallow. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I started typing. Who is this? But before I could hit send, another message came through. Unknown number. If you saw it, it's already coming. I dropped my phone. I don't know how long I stood there, my whole body locked up like my muscles had forgotten how to work. The silence around me felt thick, pressing in on my ears. Then, something scratched against the door again. Long, slow, like nails dragging across wood. I stumbled back, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. My eyes flicked to the window. I was on the 3rd floor. No fire escape. No way out. The phone buzzed again. I didn't want to pick it up. I didn't want to see what it said. But I did. Unknown number. Do not open the door. Do not look outside. Do not run. I looked back at the peephole. Something was standing there now. It was too tall. Its head nearly brushed the ceiling. It was facing the door, but I couldn't make out any details. Just a shape, something pale and wrong. My breath hitched in my throat. I took a step back. The thing outside started breathing. Not normal breathing. It was uneven, ragged, wet, like someone gasping through shredded lungs. I stumbled back, grabbed my laptop, and shoved it into my bag. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely zip it. I snatched my car keys off the counter and bolted for the window. The alley below looked empty. It was a bad idea. A 3-story drop could break something. But I wasn't staying here. I grabbed the edge of the window frame, preparing myself to climb out when my phone buzzed one last time. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. You can't run. It already knows where you are. And then the door handle started turning. The door handle turned so slowly that, for a moment, I thought I was imagining it. The metal barely creaked, shifting just enough for me to see the motion in the dim light. But I wasn't imagining it. Something was trying to come inside. I bolted. I wasn't thinking anymore. I wasn't even breathing properly. I just knew I needed to get the hell out of there. I threw my bag over my shoulder, grabbed the window ledge, and hoisted myself up. Then, from behind me, a long, shuddering inhale. It was inside the apartment. I twisted around, just for a second, just enough to glimpse movement in my peripheral vision. The light from the street lamp outside flickered through my window, casting shadows against my living room wall. And there it was. Tall, thin, wrong. Its body was hunched, its spine curving forward unnaturally, its arms hanging down past its knees. Its fingers, too long, too sharp, grazed the floor as it took a slow step forward. But I couldn't see its face. It was angled away, its head down, its whole form trembling like it was barely holding itself together. The moment I saw it, I knew. It wasn't just some horror story. It wasn't some government psyop. It was real. And I had looked. A choked sound clawed up my throat, but I forced it down. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I pushed myself through the window, gripping the rusted frame so hard my fingers burned. The wind roared in my ears as I swung my legs out and dropped. The second my feet hit the pavement, I collapsed. The impact rattled through my bones, sending a jolt of pain up my right ankle. But I didn't stop. I forced myself up, limping, staggering toward my car. I fumbled with my keys. My fingers were numb. I dropped them once, twice. By the time I wrenched the door open, my vision was tunneling. I threw myself inside, locked the doors, jammed the key into the ignition, and turned it. The car roared to life. I slammed my foot down on the gas. As I peeled out of the alley, I dared one glance in the rearview mirror. For a second, I thought maybe it hadn't followed me. Then, in the flickering streetlights, I saw it, standing in the middle of the road, its head still down, its entire body quivering. And then it started running. Not like a person, not like anything natural. Its limbs jerked forward in sharp, unnatural spasms, its head lolling, its mouth stretching wide in a silent scream. It didn't move toward me. It moved in a way that made no sense, its form distorting, shifting closer without ever really stepping forward. My stomach twisted. I floored it. The last thing I saw before I tore around the corner was its arms spreading wide, like it was welcoming me, like it knew I couldn't escape. I drove for hours. I didn't stop for gas. I didn't check my phone. I didn't let myself think. By the time I finally pulled off the highway, my hands were cramping from gripping the wheel so tightly. My entire body was locked up, my nerves frayed and burning. I pulled into an empty gas station, the fluorescent lights buzzing weakly overhead. I needed to breathe. I needed a plan. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. There were 14 missed calls from an unknown number. A new text message blinked on my screen. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Unknown number. No matter where you go, no matter how far you run, you are already dead. I stared at the message, my breathing ragged. Then, slowly, I lifted my eyes to the security monitor behind the counter. The gas station had cameras set up outside, black and white feeds flickering on the old screen. I scanned them automatically. The empty parking lot, the pumps, the road leading back to the highway. And then I saw it, standing inches behind me. Its face blurred by static. The cashier let out a strangled scream. The screen distorted. The lights flickered. And then the power went out. The entire gas station went black. The hum of the overhead fluorescence died. The refrigerator units in the back stuttered, then went silent. Even the buzzing neon sign outside flickered once before plunging into total darkness. I didn't move. I couldn't. The only sound was the cashier's ragged breathing. Somewhere near the counter, I heard him scrambling backward, the clatter of something falling to the floor. But I wasn't paying attention to him. I was still staring at the security monitor, or at least where it had been. The screen was black now, but for a moment, just before it shut off, I had seen something. A flicker of white, a blurred figure right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't turn around. My entire body was frozen, my mind screaming at me to run, but I felt like I was sinking in wet cement. Then, the sound of something sharp dragging across tile. Slow. Deliberate. I clenched my jaw, pressing my lips together to stop the noise threatening to crawl out of my throat. A little closer. Somewhere to my left, the cashier made a tiny, choking noise, then went completely silent. I didn't know if he had fainted or if he was just holding his breath like I was. My fingers twitched. I wanted to reach for my keys. I wanted to sprint for the door, jump in my car, and get as far away from here as possible. But I knew if I moved, if I made a sound, it would know. I swallowed, slowly, silently. Then the breathing started. It was worse than the scraping. It came from somewhere deep in its chest. Uneven, wet, like its lungs were filling with something that shouldn't be there. And it was so close. I squeezed my eyes shut. I don't know why. It wasn't like that would save me. I knew the rules. I had seen its face. Nothing could stop it now. But then, the front door slammed open. A gust of wind howled through the store, rattling the empty metal shelves, sending loose pieces of paper scattering across the floor. The breath caught in my throat. And then, just like that, the lights flickered back on. The hum of the refrigerators kicked back to life. The overhead fluorescents buzzed weakly, washing the gas station in their ugly yellow glow. The neon sign outside crackled back on. I gasped, sucking in air like I'd been underwater. The thing, it was gone. The space behind me was empty. No sound, no movement. The only proof that anything had happened was the sheer animal terror still coiling in my chest. And the cashier. He was still crouched near the counter, staring at me with wide, horrified eyes. "You," his voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "It was behind you." I nodded. I couldn't speak. "Did you?" He swallowed. "Did you see it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He knew. We stood there for what felt like forever, the gas station buzzing around us like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't just stopped for those few awful moments. Then I turned, slowly, carefully. Nothing was there. The aisle was empty. The floor was bare. But my brain wouldn't stop replaying what I had seen on the security monitor. It had been right behind me, inches away, and it had let me go. I didn't wait to find out. I ran. I didn't say a word to the cashier. I didn't grab anything. I just sprinted out the door, jumped into my car, and tore out of the parking lot so fast my tires screeched against the pavement. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. I drove until I ran out of gas. Hours, maybe longer. I didn't check my phone. I didn't dare turn on the radio. Every time I passed another reflective surface, shop windows, car mirrors, the dull glow of my own rear view, I didn't look. When the gas gauge hit empty, I barely made it into the parking lot of a rundown motel before my car sputtered and died. I sat there for a long time, hands locked around the steering wheel. Every muscle in my body felt like it had been stretched too tight, pulled to its limit, and left trembling. I had to do something. I had to think. I grabbed my laptop from the passenger seat. It was still dead from when it crashed. I took a breath, plugged it into the car charger, and prayed. After a few minutes, the screen flickered. Then, finally, it powered back on. I connected to the motel's Wi-Fi and opened a new tab. I wasn't going to a horror forum this time. I wasn't going to a conspiracy site. I went to my hacker contacts. If this was real, if this thing existed, someone else had to know about it. Someone had to survive. I sent out the message. I need help. SCP-96. I saw it. Then I waited. For a long time, nothing happened. And then, one reply. No name. No user profile. Just 5 words. There is no surviving it. I wanted to be sick. I forced my hands to stay steady as I typed again. There has to be a way. Someone must have lived. I need to know what to do. The reply came almost instantly. Only one person escaped. I leaned in. My breath was coming too fast. I barely registered the sting of my nails digging into my palm. How? He cut out his own eyes. I stopped breathing. I stared at the screen, my vision tunneling. No, there had to be another way. I slammed my laptop shut. My head was pounding. My entire body was shaking. I couldn't. I wouldn't. But then, my phone buzzed. I looked down. Unknown number. You saw me. I dropped it. And outside the motel window, a long, distant wail. Coming closer, the sound sent a spike of pure animal terror through my spine. A long, keening wail. It wasn't human. It wasn't even close. It was high-pitched, agonized, a noise so full of rage and grief that it made my stomach churn. It started far away, so distant, I could almost convince myself I imagined it. But then, in an instant, it shifted closer, like it had warped through the space between, like it had just found me. I shoved away from the desk, my chair scraping against the motel floor. My hands were ice cold, slick with sweat. I grabbed my phone, then dropped it again when another notification flashed on the screen. Unknown number. I'm coming. I let out a strangled breath, my pulse thundering in my ears. I had to go. Now. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the door, shoving my laptop inside as I ran. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled the lock twice before I managed to twist it open. The hallway outside was dead silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that listens. The kind that tells you something is just out of sight. I moved fast. Down the hall, past the flickering motel light, past the closed doors of rooms I knew were empty. I had been the only guest. The guy at the front desk barely looked at me when I checked in, just handed me my key and told me no parties. Like I was going to stick around long enough for that. I took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the parking lot. My breath was coming too fast, the edges of my vision hazy from sheer panic. Then I remembered. My car was out of gas. Shit, I hissed under my breath. I spun around, searching. There was nothing but emptiness. No cars. No people. Just the cracked pavement of the lot, stretching toward the road like an invitation to nowhere. And the sky. It was wrong. I hadn't noticed it before, but now, standing under the sickly glow of the buzzing motel sign, I saw it. The stars were gone. The moon was wrong. Like something had stretched the night sky into a thin, fragile veil. A veil that was about to tear open. The wail came again. Closer. I turned and ran. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I just moved. My feet pounded against the pavement as I sprinted toward the road. Maybe I could flag someone down. Maybe I could steal a car. Maybe. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Then again. And again, and again, and again. A non-stop vibration, like someone was desperately trying to reach me. I skidded to a stop. My breath was a ragged mess. My chest burned. I pulled my phone out with shaking hands. 27 new messages. All from the same number. I swallowed. Slowly, like I was peeling back a bandage, I tapped the screen. The messages loaded. They were all the same. Do not turn around. I felt a rush of ice down my spine. The wind had died. The air was too still, too thick. like the world itself was holding its breath. And then, from directly behind me, a soft, wet inhale. I don't remember making the decision to run. I don't even remember moving. 1 second, I was standing there, my feet rooted to the pavement, my mind screaming at me not to look. And the next, I was sprinting, blinded by terror, bolting down the road as fast as my legs could carry me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But I heard it. The footsteps. Not footsteps. Something else. Something that didn't make sense. A jerking, distorted stutter of motion, like it was slipping between the cracks of reality itself. Like it wasn't bound by the same rules as me. The motel disappeared behind me. The road stretched into endless black ahead. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just had to get away. But deep down, I already knew. I wasn't running away from it. It was letting me run. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs felt like they were full of shattered glass. The road stretched out ahead of me like it never ended, nothing but darkness swallowing the horizon. The wind had picked up again, but it wasn't normal. It didn't feel normal. It was hot, wet, like something was breathing down my neck, like something was waiting. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Every time my foot hit the pavement, I felt the thing behind me. The way it moved, the way it didn't move, the way it felt like it was getting closer and further away at the same time, like reality was warping around it. I knew what was coming next. I had read the files. I knew the stories. No one survived, except for one man, and he had carved out his own eyes. I forced the thought away, clenching my teeth so hard my jaw ached. There had to be another way. I ran past mile markers I couldn't read, past empty fields that stretched forever into blackness. My vision blurred at the edges. Every gas station, every rest stop, every reflection, I kept my head down. I didn't look. But then I saw it. A light up ahead, flickering, weak. I didn't question it. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted toward it with everything I had left. The building took shape as I got closer. A church. An old wooden church, standing alone on the side of the road like it had been waiting for me. The doors were open. I didn't stop to think. I ran inside. The second I crossed the threshold, something shifted. Like stepping into a vacuum. The air inside was still, thick, like I had run into another world entirely. The church was empty. Wooden pews stretched out in perfect rows, leading up to an altar covered in dust. Stained glass windows framed the walls, casting strange, distorted shadows across the floor. I slammed the doors shut behind me and locked them. My heart was still hammering against my ribs. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stumbled forward, gasping for breath, my knees threatening to buckle beneath me. I wasn't safe. I knew that. I had read enough stories to know that nothing could stop this thing. No walls, no doors, no distance. But I needed time. I needed to think. I staggered toward the altar, my mind racing. My vision swam. I gripped the edge of the wooden podium, trying to force myself to stay present. There had to be a way out. There had to be. My phone rang. The sound shattered the silence like a gunshot. I jumped, my stomach lurching. My fingers fumbled for my pocket, nearly dropping the phone before I pulled it out. Unknown caller. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. Then, against every ounce of instinct screaming at me, I answered. I put the phone to my ear. Silence. A distorted, crackling breath. Then, a whisper. "You saw me." My stomach twisted so hard I nearly doubled over. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't right. It was warped, stretched, like it was being filtered through something broken. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. The voice came again, barely audible through the static. "It doesn't matter." My entire body locked up. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering against the wooden floor. Then, from outside the church, a long, shuddering wail. My blood turned to ice. It had found me. I moved fast. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy wooden cross hanging near the altar, and smashed every reflective surface I could find. The first stained glass window shattered, sending shards raining onto the pews. The second one exploded outward, shards glittering in the dim light. I moved to the pulpit, knocking over a tarnished silver mirror that had been mounted on the wall. The frame cracked as it hit the floor. No reflections. No faces. No way for it to find me. The church doors shook, not like something was knocking, like something was testing them, like something was smiling behind them. I stumbled back, my breath ragged, my pulse hammering so hard it hurt. I was out of time. There was only one thing left to do. I reached into my bag. My fingers found the cold, sharp edge of a knife. I knew what the files said. I knew what had to happen next. I took a deep breath and pressed the blade against my eye. The tip of the knife pressed against my lower eyelid, cold and unsteady in my shaking hand. My breath came fast and uneven, each inhale catching on the knot in my throat. Could I really do this? I squeezed my eyes shut. The church doors rattled again, harder this time. The wooden beams groaned under the pressure, the hinges screaming as something outside pressed against them. I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. I repositioned my grip on the handle, tilting the blade slightly upward, aiming the sharp point just beneath my right eye socket. My chest tightened. My fingers trembled. The doors exploded inward. I barely had time to react before a rush of wind slammed into me, knocking me off my feet. I hit the ground hard, my head cracking against the cold wooden floor. Stars burst behind my eyelids. My ears rang. I lost the knife. It skidded across the floor, spinning out of reach. I tried to push myself up, but my limbs weren't working. My body felt like lead, like something had reached inside me and torn out all my strength. Then, the breathing, right above me. Slow, wet, ragged. Every muscle in my body seized up. I knew if I opened my eyes, it would be there. I knew. I clenched my jaw so hard, I thought my teeth might shatter. My nails dug into my palms. I forced myself to stay still, to keep my eyelids sealed shut, but it didn't matter. I could feel it. I could feel the weight of its presence, towering over me, hunched and trembling, its limbs twitching with barely contained rage. I felt it move, a slow, agonizing shift of motion, like its body was resisting itself, like it was caught in the space between waiting and killing. A long, shuddering inhale. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might throw up. I squeezed my eyes tighter. A beat of silence. It spoke. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe the words weren't real. Maybe they didn't come from its mouth, if it even had one, but from somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. Somewhere beyond. But I heard them. A cold weight settled over my chest. No. I had followed the rules. I had destroyed every reflection. I had stayed hidden. But none of it mattered. because I had already seen. I felt something shift. The air around me warped, twisting like liquid, the atmosphere bending under an impossible force. It was moving. It was leaning down. Something cold brushed my forehead, then my cheek, then my eyelids. A scream built in my throat, but I swallowed it down, my entire body locked up in pure animal terror. It was touching me. It was peeling my eyes open. No, 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 no. My vision flooded with white. A face, horribly contorted, its mouth stretched wide in a silent, eternal wail. Its eyes were empty pits of anguish, its skin pulled too tight over jagged, unnatural bones. It was grieving. It was raging. It was screaming without sound. I had no time to react, no time to think, no time to move. A pair of cold, skeletal hands wrapped around my skull. And then, darkness. Weeks later, the church was found abandoned. The doors had been blasted open from the inside, the wooden pews shattered, the stained glass windows destroyed. But no body was found. Only a single, blood-stained laptop. The screen was still on. A thread was open on a private dark web forum. The last thing ever posted. A corrupted image. A grainy, distorted face. A single, final message underneath. Do not look. This is the Curator. I hope you've enjoyed today's scary story. Until next time.